Welcome to Friday Friends, RI Elder Info's weekly look at the organizations and individuals providing resources for Rhode Island seniors, caregivers, and professionals.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Friday Friends. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I am Deb Burton, the founder and creator, of RI Elder Info. It's the most comprehensive resource for seniors, caregivers, and professionals in Rhode Island. And every week at 9 o'clock on Friday, we go live, except today we had some technical difficulties. It's always fun when your system decides to just do a reboot. So every Friday at 9 a.m., we interview different organizations from around Rhode Island that are doing things that are really important for people to know about. So I really want you to hit the like button and to share this out with your friends, because I'm sure you know someone who needs the information that we're going to talk about today. And it's also really important that we have conversations in regards to mental health awareness. As you know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so we are focusing our Friday Friends on different aspects of mental health. So what we do, we are a nonprofit. What we do would not be possible without the support of our sponsors. So a big shout out to Oak Street Health. They have multiple locations, one in Warwick by the Christmas tree shop, two in Providence, one in Woonsocket. They're the primary care providers for Medicare beneficiaries. They even provide transportation to the office. We have Tamarisk Assisted Living Facility. They're a wonderful little assisted living facility in Warwick, right over by the mall, easy on off the highway. Give my friend Sue a call over there, and she'd be happy to show you around and welcome your loved one in at any time. What we do certainly wouldn't be possible without the magic of D&B Media, who is behind the scenes here, operating the control board for me. So it's one less thing for me to worry about. And England Studio, who is the one who maintains our website and keeps that all up to date. So this week, I am very excited to speak to my guest, Meg Clingham, from the Office of the Rhode Island Mental Health Advocate. Welcome, Meg.
Good morning. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Hi, Meg. So tell everybody, who are you? What is the Rhode Island Mental Health Advocate? What does your office do?
Okay, so I'm the director of the Office of the Mental Health Advocate. I'm a lawyer. Our office is a small independent state agency that is tasked with representing people in Rhode Island living with serious persistent mental illness. Our charge is to protect basically the civil and liberty interests of people living with serious persistent mental illness. We're essentially a small law firm. It's myself and two other lawyers, and we represent people who are subject to involuntary commitment to psychiatric facilities. We represent people, we do a lot of housing retention and represent people who are facing eviction due to various issues related to their illness. I do a lot of education and reaching out. I try to participate in a lot of police training about the mental health law and dealing with people in various situations with law enforcement. Represent the patients at Eleanor Slater Hospital and a lot of people at the ACI who are incarcerated, but due in large part to untreated mental illness. That's some of the things we do.
Oh, is that all?
That's not all, actually, but that's some of
it. So, wow, your office, it doesn't sound like it's very big, but you have a wide variety of things that you are responsible for. So let's see where to start. When you talk about individuals who have severe persistent mental illness, sometimes referred to as SPMI, what are examples of what that is? Because our viewers might not know exactly what that is or what that looks like.
So some examples are people who are living with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder, major persistent depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, a range of personality disorders that impair life's functioning, those are the main diagnoses. And then of course there's some others, but those are the main diagnoses of most of our clients.
Okay. Does it include folks with traumatic brain injuries or dementia with behavioral disturbances?
It does not, actually. I mean, sometimes, a lot of times, there are people with co-occurring disorders, but what my office is tasked is our authority is for people with psychiatric disorders, and TBI, traumatic brain injuries, are not classified as psychiatric disorders, nor is dementia as far as what we do. But as I say, a lot of our clients do have multiple challenges. So, you know.
And it would also not be the individuals, say, who were born with Down syndrome or other intellectual developmental disabilities.
Correct. There are other advocacy agencies for people living with developmental disabilities. But as I said, some of our clients have developmental disabilities as well as, say, schizophrenia or bipolar disorder.
Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense. So it really is the individuals who have mental illness. And are the individuals with mental illness, are they a particular age group, or does it cross the age spectrum, mental illness?
Age spectrum crosses the age spectrum. We have children up until older adults.
Okay. And when you talk about being the advocate for housing and that kind of thing, what's happening for folks who have mental illness and their housing?
So a lot of times our clients run into difficulties with their housing due to some of their behaviors or some of the symptoms of their illness. Sometimes it's a matter of the person being disorganized and not being able to keep track of, say, their finances. So they fall behind in their rent because they're not opening their mail, or they're not able to handle their own finances. That's a relatively easy fix, because what we do is work with the community mental health centers where the people are receiving services, and the community mental health centers have a mechanism by which they can become the representative payee of the person who's receiving Social Security benefits. So if it's a matter of payment, then that's a pretty easy fix. We can get them back on track and work something out with the landlords that the community mental health center will take over the bills. Sometimes it's more challenging that some people have some sort of behaviors that make it difficult for them to fit into the particular place where they're living. Some behaviors that may technically violate the conditions of their lease, but you know, we try to work out arrangements to make sure people are in treatment, to make sure that they're not discriminated against just because their behaviors are different than what people expect, but you know, they're not dangerous or anything. Sometimes it's a situation where the person's just not in the right level of care and they're not able to be maintained in their apartment. So what we try to do with that is we try to, most importantly, avoid having an eviction on somebody's record, because if somebody has an eviction on their record, then it's very difficult to get into housing, into subsidized housing. So we try to work to get the person into the right level of care that they need without having an eviction on their record. And when I say work on getting people into the right level of care, we don't have a social worker in our office. We need one, but we don't. So we really rely on our partners at the community mental health centers, or in other cases, you know, the public defender's office when we're talking about people involved in the criminal system. So when I say we try and get them into different situations, we're just lawyers, but we work with our partners out in the community.
I would never describe you as just a lawyer.
I think that's clear. I always tell people I'm not a clinician, I'm just a lawyer, but you know, I've been doing this for 30 years, so I have a little bit of, you know, knowledge.
Maybe just a little. You're also a fierce advocate, and I respect that a lot. You know, I know that you're not afraid to speak up. And you mentioned something in regards to individuals with SPMI, with mental illness, being your neighbors. For the vast majority of people with mental illness.
Yeah, I can't hear you. Oh, yeah, there's some kind of a.
Can you hear me now? How about
very
now?
Static. Yes.
How about now?
Sorry.
Okay.
Yes,
That's okay. So for the vast majority of the folks who have mental illness, if they're your neighbors, I think we see a lot in the media that talk about being afraid, and that people should be afraid of them, that they're going to do harm. But most people with mental illness, should we be afraid of them, or are they really just like us?
Absolutely not. We should not be afraid of people with mental illness. All of the research and all of the literature shows that 99.9% of people with serious mental illness are not dangerous by virtue of their illness. That people are much more likely to be victimized than to be dangerous themselves. So yeah, I mean, it's an illness, and it's not anything. Everybody's got their own individual and unique challenges, so it's nothing other than that.
Yeah, it when it comes to mental illness, particularly in Mental Health Awareness Month, it's, if I said, wow, with the weather changing, my arthritis is really hurting, people would respond, oh yeah, my knee is killing me too. But if I said, wow, with Mother's Day passing, I'm really depressed, a lot of times it's met with silence because we don't talk about our mental illness.
Right. That's why events like this are so important. Why May is Mental Health Month is important, because we really need to get rid of the stigma. I mean, I think we've come a long way, in the last 10 years or so with addressing the stigma connected with mental illness, but we still have a long way to go. And people should be comfortable talking about it.
Yep.
There's nothing, to be ashamed of or to hide. People, as I say, we all have, somebody has diabetes, somebody has arthritis, somebody has schizophrenia. It's all in the, human condition.
Yeah. And I think, there is, I know for sure there is a myth that as we age, we naturally become depressed. And the reality, the science shows that that's actually not true. The longer we live, many times the more positive we become. But when someone has SPMI, their brain is really kind of broken, but it's something that can be treated, right?
Yes, I mean it's a brain disease is one way to look at it, and it absolutely can be treated. And that's part of, I don't know that I mentioned this, but a lot of what we do is advocate for people's treatment rights to make sure that they're actually receiving treatment suitable to their condition, so that they're not undertreated and having difficulty, say, staying in their apartment or staying out of the radar of law enforcement. So yes, absolutely, it can be treated just like any other illness.
I've seen some presentations in some groups where our prison system is one of the largest places, unfortunately, people get or not their mental health treatment. So there may be an individual who's experiencing a mental health crisis, say shouting outside of a store, and the police come and they're arrested for disorderly conduct. They end up in the ACI. That doesn't seem like the appropriate place for them to receive the help that they need.
It is absolutely not the appropriate place. And I have to say the ACI does the best that they can, but they're not equipped, and they should not be the place where the facility where people receive mental health treatment. I can't tell you, and I won't tell you, but like how many clients we have. There's a gentleman I'm dealing with today that has 2 disorderly conduct charges, who is at the ACI, who we're working on getting over to the hospital because he's very sick. The system is broken. The system is broken, and we do not have a sufficient continuum of care out in the community to keep people safe. And by people safe, I don't mean from being victimized by people with mental illness. I mean people who are acting strangely and are charged with disorderly conduct, for example, and end up at the prison because the courts or the police feel that they have no place else to put them. So the system's broken, and I know Eleanor Slater's been in the news, and I've been rather outspoken about it. But any further closing of Eleanor Slater Hospital is just going to make this problem worse. And that's why I think people need to be very aware that we have a civil psychiatric side of Eleanor Slater Hospital that is essential as part of the continuum of care for people living with SPMI.
I'm glad that you brought up Eleanor Slater and Zambrano, because it is in the news a lot. And, I'm not a medical person, but I like to think of myself as an advocate. And there's some things that I have read in the newspaper and have seen in public comment and testimony at the State House that don't seem to make sense to me whatsoever. And I know that you're not a spokesperson for these facilities, but maybe you can answer some of the questions. It's my understanding that there have been a number of folks who have been discharged out of the hospital over the last year. The reasoning behind that, I guess, remains to be seen. But what are the options for placement for individuals who maybe have been at Eleanor Slater Hospital and Zambarano Hospital, perhaps for decades? What are their housing options? Where are they going?
Excuse me, the mailman must be here. I'm sorry.
They only bark when we're live or when the phone rings.
So I muted my phone. So I can't really speak to Zambrano with much authority because, excuse me 1 second, I'm so sorry.
See, this is the fun of when you have live stream going and you also have pets in the house. I have no doubt that some of you have heard my little puppies go click, 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 bye, or heard them bark as well. But I'm really looking forward to speaking with Meg about the Eleanor Slater and the Zambarano Hospital situation. Oh, there's our buddy.
Sorry, the big one's outside, but the little one's the problem child. So just as background, Eleanor Slater Hospital has two campuses. One is the Zambrano campus up in Barberville, and that's for people with severe medical conditions that need that level of care, that can't be cared for sufficiently in any placements in the community. That's Zambrano. Okay. My clients are on the Cranston campus. That's the psychiatric facilities. So there are two separate.
It's okay. It's almost as though every time you go to speak, the dog barks.
Yeah, she's just. So at Cranston is where the psychiatric facilities are. Yep. Two separate facilities. One is for forensic psychiatric patients. That means people who are involved in the criminal justice system, who are sent there by the courts because they're facing criminal charges. The other part, which I am concerned people don't know enough about and they need to know more about, is the civil psychiatric wards. That's patients who are not involved in the criminal justice system, but who are at Eleanor Slater Hospital because they have failed all other levels of care in the community and they need a very high level of psychiatric care. That's people, some of the people are voluntary patients. Some of the people are there by civil court order. We have in Rhode Island a civil mental health court for involuntary commitments. So if somebody's in need of care and treatment, they don't have insight into their illness such that they're willing to voluntarily accept the care and treatment, but a psychiatrist feels that they present a danger to themselves or to others should their illness be untreated, then they can be civilly committed. So there's civil patients at Eleanor Slater Hospital. People can also be civilly committed to outpatient treatment as well, but for purposes of this discussion, that's the civil side of Eleanor Slater Hospital. And yes, some of those patients have been there for years and years, and for various reasons. Some are just such high acuity of their illness and their needs that they need a hospital level of care. Some entered 30, 40 years ago, we really didn't have the same kind of treatment options available in the community as we do now. But they've been there for so many years that at this point we have some elderly people who essentially have lived there, and that's where they're comfortable. That's where their families are comfortable. They know that that's where they're receiving excellent treatment. So at this point, it's very, very difficult to transition someone out of their home of 30 years into a nursing home. And nursing homes at this point mostly are not equipped to provide the high level of psychiatric care that some of these patients need.
And so some of the barriers, it sounds like, is that there aren't lower level of care facilities that are able to meet these individuals' needs. And I think when you're talking about civil commitment, judges have the ability to mandate that individuals, say, take their medication, correct?
Well, the judge has the ability to mandate that somebody cooperates with their treatment plan. So medication management is part of that. Yeah. It's kind of a tricky, it's not, the judge can't exactly order somebody to take medication, but what the judge can do is substitute consent So if a person is in need of medication, but they're not able to provide informed consent, then the judge substitutes her consent or his or her consent for the person. And then they can order the person to comply with their treatment plan, which includes medication.
Okay. And that's not something that nursing homes, by their regulations, would even be able to do. If a person chooses not to take their medication in a nursing home can't strongly advise someone forcefully to take their medication, even if that is part of their treatment plan. And so folks living in a hospital, like I can't imagine, like I'm picturing something along the lines of, the hospitals I've been in, like a Rhode Island hospital situation. Are there activities going on that are age appropriate? Is there things to keep people engaged and provide as normal a life as possible, although they're in the hospital?
Yes, thank you for asking. That's a great question, because there is a difference between an acute care hospital such as Rhode Island Hospital, which is meant to treat somebody in an acute period of illness for, a short period of time, as opposed to a long-term care hospital such as Eleanor Slater, which is intended and equipped to deal with people who need long-term placement. So yes, there are different activities. I mean, there's groups, there's activities, there's activity rooms and occupational therapists that do different activities. There's a nice campus in Cranston that people can be. My office is there where the hospital buildings are as well. It's a very nice campus where people can go outside and take walks and, be involved in the outdoors. Unfortunately, I have to say that over the years, the buildings on the Cranston campus, just much like Zambrano, have been neglected. They're not up to speed. They're not up to par. They are not as nice as they once were or should be. And I'm hoping that with the pause that Governor McKee has put on the plans for the hospital, I'm really hoping that some investment is made, that people realize we need to invest in our state hospital, bring it up to code, make it safe, and make it a comfortable place for people to receive treatment. But it is different. I have some clients who are stuck because Eleanor Slater doesn't take admissions anymore unless it's from the criminal court. So I have people who need that level of treatment, but they can't get in. So they've been stuck on an acute care ward at, say, Rhode Island Hospital for a year or 2 years because there's no placement, no nursing home or group home that is equipped to treat their high level of psychiatric needs. But Eleanor Slater Hospital just refuses to admit civil patients. So there are people stuck out in the community for years in community hospitals. And then there are also people who need that level of treatment who are in group homes that can't handle their high level of treatment. And that's the people that pick up the disorderly conduct charges, or they violate some old probation and they end up at the ACI.
At one time, 70s, 80s, maybe early 90s, Rhode Island was a model for the country in mental health services. And now I feel like I can't turn on the news or pick up the paper without seeing things on Eleanor Slater and Zambrano from, it feels like I've been seeing it for so long, from staff going into the facilities COVID positive, to facilities that had significant ligature risks or hanging risks, to not being able to bill Medicaid, to the thing that left me kind of scratching my head, how this could not have been perceived earlier. But it's my understanding one of the buildings has a pit or a hole in the floor that people can fall into during the regular operation of business. There are fire doors that are removed. If we want to care as a society for some of our most vulnerable people, this kind of living environment has got to be unacceptable. There has to be movement to make this a positive environment for individuals who are ill. I mean, reading this stuff just blows me away. How did it get like this? It's, if I'm reporting to duty and the fire door is not there, it's just not even on the hinges, I feel like that should be like, hey folks, like, this is a hazard because fire doors block fire, or there's a hole I can fall into, and so can the residents. And yet it seems like there's a lot of back and forth, leaking oxygen piping. I'm seeing that. And I know some of that stuff is over at ZAM, but these are folks that deserve our care. But it's almost as though there's a misperception that there's someplace else for them to go, and that there's only a handful. I don't think folks realize that there are individuals who are waiting for a bed, like you were saying, in acute care hospitals. From a finance perspective, that just sounds wildly expensive to keep people in the hospital. What do you see as the best step forward to get this resolved?
So these conditions have deteriorated gradually over time because the state has frankly neglected to invest into the infrastructure. The state has neglected to keep these buildings up to code. And it's not the fault. The people that work at these hospitals, at Cranston and at Zambrano, are dedicated. They have been raising these concerns for years. But the hospital administration, I can't answer why. I mean, I think that there is not the political will to take care of our most vulnerable brothers and sisters who live at Eleanor Slater Hospital. Out of sight, out of mind. I have been trying to advocate and get the word out. Others have been as well. We try to talk to the General Assembly, to the Governor's Office, to BHDDH administration. I can't answer you why there's been this level of intentional neglect over the years, but when we were a model system, Rhode Island was one of the top in the country back when you were saying in the 80s, after deinstitutionalization. Back then, the state had a money budgeted to the behavioral health system. Now the state doesn't have any dedicated budget for the behavioral health system out in the community. It relies on federal grant money, on insurance, Medicaid, Medicare collection. So the state hasn't dedicated funding either to keeping up Eleanor Slater Hospital up to code or to the entire system of care in the community. So that's how we've gotten to this point. My fervent hope at this point is now that people are aware and paying attention that the state will invest in the continuum of care, the system of care. So at the high end of that, for a very small amount of people, is Eleanor Slater Hospital. Most people should be out in the community, and everybody has the right to live in the least restrictive setting that is suitable to their needs, that can meet their needs. For a very small amount of people, that is Eleanor Slater Hospital. But then we need other options in the community, such as perhaps nursing homes with dedicated psychiatric units, or group homes with a higher level of security than some of the group homes right now have. More assisted living, more wraparound services, such as assertive community treatment, where the community mental health centers have a dedicated team that go out to the client at their homes once, twice, 3 times a day, whatever it takes to make sure that they're taking their medications, that they're, going grocery shopping, maintaining their health, that kind of thing. So we really this is the critical time that we need to reinvest in that system of care. I really hope that with some of the money, the CARES Act, the money, the COVID relief money, a lot of it is dedicated to behavioral health systems. So I'm hoping that the state is really looking at how to carefully invest that money to rebuild our system to the way it needs to be.
I do too. And I just want to clarify, by no means am I denigrating any of the staff over there. I've listened to the testimony, and the families of the residents all speak very highly of the real care and attention and love that people have provided to their loved ones in Zambrano and in Eleanor Slater Hospital. So I mean, any slight towards the actual employees. So some of the barriers that I can see is, we really need the financial investment when it comes to, say, building a nursing home. Now, the last time I checked, which I admit it's been a little bit, but we needed something called a certificate of need. We were not building any more nursing homes in the state unless the developer of those nursing homes was able to provide a certificate that there was a need for those beds. So is it possible, with a lot of the transitions going on in nursing homes, that we can have one of these nursing homes that already exist be dedicated to long-term care for individuals with mental illness?
Yes. I think that it's hard to know exactly what's going on because the system's not really transparent, and it's not as if answers are forthcoming. So it's hard to know what's going on. And I think there's probably some discussion behind the scenes about that right now. But what's important to know, I mean, I think that a Jerry psych nursing home would be a great idea, because there are some people who could thrive in that environment, who would do well in that environment, particularly as people we see who are out in the community right now are aging. But it would have to be very carefully done in order to make sure that, as you stated, that the medications could be administered, high levels of psychotropic medications could be administered safely, that there's trained psychiatric staff there that are, trained to deal with the behavioral issues. So I think that is something that we need as part of the continuum of care. The problem now is I've had some clients who have been discharged into nursing homes that are very well-meaning, that want to take care for them, that people are very caring, but the behavioral challenges are such that if you're not specifically trained to deal with a psychiatric population, you can't deal with some of these high-level behaviors. So then people go to the nursing home, it doesn't work out, Eleanor Slater won't take them back, so then they end up, as I say, living at Rhode Island Hospital. And that should not be acceptable to anybody.
Yeah. And, I think another part of it is, payer sources, because you are right, we have individuals who are aging with their mental illness. At some point, the physical ability to act on negative behaviors associated with those mental illnesses becomes reduced or diminished entirely with aging. If an individual maybe has SPMI, but then maybe they have a massive stroke and they're no longer physically able to get around, that's an entirely different care need. I would say an actual additional care need because of the stroke. But I feel like there's a lot of opportunity. We don't have an Olmstead Plan. It's my understanding without having an Olmstead Plan, we are, as a state, at risk for being fined by the federal government. We're not looking at least restrictive environment for folks. That's really important. And so
it's important, and we've been advocating for the state to adopt an Olmstead Plan for as long as I've been the advocate, which is almost 10 years now. And I know people before me. What the state's at risk of without an Olmstead Plan is getting sued, much like by the Department of Justice, the Civil Office of Civil Rights. That's what the state's at risk of, by not adopting an Olmstead Plan. And part of the Olmstead Plan is, as you say, investing in that system of care so that people can be in the least restrictive environment. I want to go back to your example of a person who's aging, who has a serious psychiatric diagnosis. Just because you have co-occurring, age-related medical conditions that happen, that doesn't diminish the psychiatric diagnosis, so that, the person still needs that level of psychiatric care. And the behaviors, I see what you're saying about, behaviors, maybe you're wheelchair bound now as opposed to being able to walk around. But some of the behaviors that I've had that nursing homes, that are challenging, people, I have clients that scream all day long, people who are refractory to treatment. That's not conducive to being in a non-psychiatric facility, because it disturbs everybody. Everybody has the right to live peacefully and get the level of treatment they need. So there's all sorts of different behaviors on the spectrum that really need to be taken into account. It makes me nervous when, not you at all, but when the hospital, when Eleanor Slater seems to think, well, these people are elderly now, they can just go to a nursing home. It's because you're elderly doesn't mean you don't have schizophrenia anymore,
Right.
And people are on medications that take a lot of careful management that, as I said, need special training to administer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And behavioral plans need to be followed, that kind of thing, really strict behavioral plans that are additional challenges. So
there were a couple of questions that have come up in the chat, and one we touched on it just a tiny bit, and I want to go back to it, is Helene Tay asked, what resources are available if the individual is not eligible for Medicaid?
That's a tough one. That's difficult. Thank goodness that most people are now eligible for Medicaid, or a lot of my clients, you know, people are collecting Social Security income are eligible for Medicaid, you know. But yeah, people who are, say, undocumented immigrants aren't eligible for Medicaid. That is tough. It's very difficult to get people treatment not eligible.
It's interesting. When we look at undocumented individuals, you know, many facilities won't take them because they don't have a payer source. And so, right. You know, unfortunately, these are businesses. They, you know, they do need to generate revenue, if not so much profit, as they need to be able to sustain their businesses. So without a payer source, that becomes even more challenging, so that then the default becomes even more individuals remaining in a Miriam or a Rhode Island or a Roger Williams or a Fatima, versus or getting transferred over to Eleanor, Slater, and or Zambrano. A question has come up, and I've seen this in the news. So the question is, what is the criteria that the Alliance for Better Long-Term Care and the Ombudsman's Office has used to determine a proper discharge? And are they then involved when the client is unsuccessful? It's been reported in the news that the Ombudsman's Office has a contract with BHDDH to get people discharged into the community. I don't know the accuracy of that reporting, because they also have a contract to be advocates for the residents. So that would seem to be a conflict of interest. But if they are facilitating those discharges, what is the criteria for folks to be discharged?
One. That's a few questions in one. And I can't speak for the Ombudsman's Office except to say that they are fierce advocates for the patients. Whatever their payer source is, or part of their payer source, I don't know. But the Ombudsman's Office I work very closely with them, and they are fierce advocates for the patients. As far as criteria for discharge, it's unclear, because the administration of Eleanor Slater Hospital is not transparent about what they now consider criteria for discharge. So it's hard to know. But I can say that the Ombudsman's Office, as far as people who are going into nursing facilities, into nursing homes, they are very aware of the client's needs, of the patient's needs, and do their best to make sure that if they're going into a nursing home, it's a good fit. And they advocate for those patients daily. We work very closely together. So I can see how maybe it could be perceived as a conflict of interest, but I can tell you that not at all in my estimation, you know.
Oh, that's
good. They
don't
work for BHDDH, they work for the patients.
Yeah, and I think the more people that have the clients back, have the patients back, I think it's better. I know that they have
invaluable to me. Like we partner, you know, on these things, and the Ombudsman's Office is invaluable to my work too. You know, fierce advocates.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So if there's unclear discharge guidelines, how does this move forward so that, say, for instance, completely imaginary, completely fictional, an outside entity comes in, builds up an assisted living facility and says, we are specializing in individuals with mental health issues. How do we find, hey, here's folks from languishing in the hospitals, languishing at the AZI, languishing in Eleanor Slater or Zambrano. Hey, this is a great opportunity. How are those things decided?
Again, the process isn't very transparent. I would hope now that, as I said, we've taken a pause, I would hope that the community input would be considered. I would hope that all the entities affected, such as the Department of Corrections, the Eleanor Slater Hospital, obviously, the other nursing facilities, I think everybody needs to have a say in the development, or at least be heard in what is needed in the development of these programs. And I'm confident that at this point, the Department of Health is looking closely into those issues. I think it's something that it's been a constant effort to raise awareness of this, but I'm confident that the Department of Health, especially with the proposed closing or downsizing of Eleanor Slater Hospital, is taking a really close look into what will be, what facilities will be able to open and what services they provide to make sure they're up to par.
Yeah, that'll be good. Because there's also been talk, at the time, Director Powers had testified in one of the meetings that when Ladd School closed, many families brought their loved ones home. And now those families are aging. So we have elderly folks who are taking care of folks at home, maybe with SPMI, maybe with intellectual or developmental disabilities, and they're going to need services too. And they're not necessarily registered in the system as really being out there as potential clients for some of these facilities that are being developed. So I would hope as these conversations go with Rhode Island Department of Health and other entities, that we look at not just the Eleanor Slater and Zambarano hospitals, but all of our population that could really use some additional support going forward.
Absolutely. I found that a little, as far as, again, I'm not speaking to the seriously medically compromised patients at ZAM. I'm talking about the seriously psychiatrically compromised patients who are my clients. I frankly found it a little insulting to families when Director Powers said that, in the olden days, people used to just put their people in institutions, but now people want to take care of them. Some people are so ill that they cannot be cared for by their family. Most of my clients don't have families that are sufficient, that are capable of even dealing with this, even if they have families that are still involved in their care. So there's some of our most vulnerable people don't have the family support that some of us have, so I think that's an important consideration. There's just some people that don't have a family that they can go to, or they have a family, but that is ill-equipped or unequipped or completely unable to deal with this high level of acuity. So I think that's important to point out, and that's why we as a state and as a system need to have a sufficient array of placements that people can live in the community with their family support if they have family, but not necessarily in the family home. That's just not realistic for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think if we thought about if an individual were, say, diagnosed with cardiac issues and they needed a pacemaker put in, but instead of putting in a pacemaker, it's like, well, the family can just keep doing CPR. There are some medical things that families can't do, and that is also true for individuals with severe persistent mental illness. It's just not possible physically, emotionally, time-wise. Some people need 24-hour care, and family members have to sleep sometime.
But if you even have a family member that has sufficient housing to take somebody in, there's a lot of moving parts to that. And I have to say that family members that I've spoken with who are very concerned about their family, some of my clients have very involved family members, but they've told me heartbreaking stories. This is the only place where my family member has been safe. Prior to being at Eleanor Slater Hospital, they were at this group home that failed, where they got hurt because, they were at this other group home where they ended up getting arrested because they destroyed some furniture. They were at the ACI. Eleanor Slater is the only place that's provided a high enough level of services where their loved one is safe. So people are scared that people are going to be discharged back into that system that was ill-equipped to deal with the patient in the first place. So just going back to it, most people can be treated in the community if we had the services, which we don't right now. But there's always going to be a small population of people that need a hospital level, long-term hospital level of care.
Yeah.
Not a lot. Nothing like back in the day before deinstitutionalization or Ladd School. I would say, I can't estimate numbers, but probably under 100, but we need some capacity for that. And sometimes people need longer-term care for a period of maybe a year or two, and then can go back out into the community. And that's another reason why we need a long-term care facility such as Eleanor Slater Hospital, to be able to get people, stabilize people, and then get them ready and rehabilitated to go back into the community.
I think that's a really important message too, is that individuals can receive the care that they need, get the treatment they need, and have recovery and be sustained in the community and live in by society standards a normal life. That is possible.
Absolutely, it is possible. But, some people need a longer period of stabilization with heightened rehabilitative services that should be provided at the state hospital.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
No.
Oh, so if people think that their loved one could use your services, maybe they're involved and, the family knows that they have some mental health concerns and they're involved with the court system, et cetera. What are the options for people reaching out to you? Who are your clients? Who would reach out to you?
It's all across the spectrum, Deb. If anybody has questions, though, we get many inquiries every day, and we sort through them. We get back to everybody, and if it's not something that we can help with, we try to direct them to the right place. So my office's phone number is 462-2003. Anybody that thinks, and keep in mind, we are a law office. We provide legal services. But if anybody thinks that they could use advocacy, legal help, or if they just have questions that I might be able to direct them in the right place, then call that number, 462-2003. And we get back to people we try to get back to everyone within 24 hours.
That's awesome, particularly in the era of COVID and so much technology. To get back in 24 hours is amazing.
Well, we try. I can't guarantee that all the time, but we try our best. As I said, there's 3 of us, and we're doing a lot of stuff, but we try to get back.
Oh my God, yeah. And if an organization wanted training or, a group wanted to be educated more about mental health advocacy and support, can your office provide that too?
Yes, over the years, I've often done training on the mental health law specifically, but also education about my office. I've been involved recently in a lot of police officer trainings to make them aware of my office, and also as part of a program, crisis intervention training. So this, teaching law enforcement how best to de-escalate and deal with people and alternatives to arresting people with severe mental illness. So that's just one example, but yes, outreach and education is part of our mission, and that's part of what I do, such as today.
I appreciate you coming on.
I like doing stuff like this. I like making sure people are aware and making sure that we are a resource. As I say, if we can't help you, then I will try and point you in the right direction.
And that's one of the things I've always appreciated about you, is that if you don't have the answer, you'll find who does have the answer. What can people do to support the work that you do, and what can they do to advocate for individuals who are living with severe and persistent mental illness?
Well, on a state, right now, I think it's important that people let their members of the General Assembly know that, we are concerned about our brothers and sisters with severe mental illness, and we need the state to invest. I think the governor's office all elected officials need to know that this is a population that they need to be concerned about, that we need to take care of, and that we all care about. It can't be forgotten and swept under the rug.
No, absolutely not. And even if it's not something that pulls on your heartstrings as a human being, to have others that need to be treated with dignity and respect, as we all should be. If you want to look at it from a financial standpoint, having folks sort of held in acute care hospitals and other high level medical level of care facilities, Rhode Island, Fatima, Butler, having them stay there because there's no place for them to go. From a business sense, that is extraordinarily expensive. So I would say, contact your representatives, your senators, your congressmen who represent your areas, and maybe be advocates for the humanity of it, but also in relation, if it's not about the humanity, in relation to the money that is being paid. One of those two should motivate people.
Very good point as far as the money, because I don't think people tend to look at things in silos. So while it might save, say, BHDDH money to close Eleanor Slater Hospital, right? It's not going to save the taxpayers of Rhode Island money, because we are paying for Medicaid. We are paying for the homeless system. We are paying for incarceration of people. Department of Corrections now has about far more people with SPMI than Eleanor Slater Hospital, and we're paying for the Department of Corrections. We're paying for the courts and the Attorney General's office and the Public Defender's office who represent these people. So there's costs that go throughout the system, and as you mentioned, the hospitals, and so the societal costs it might save Buddha money, BHDDH money, but it's not saving the state any money. So the resources need to be allocated such that we can take care of people in a more cost-effective manner than incarcerating, having them be homeless, having chronic medical conditions arising out of homelessness and untreated mental illness. So, it does save money. The humanity is the part that gets me, but I have to look at it as money too. And it would save a significant amount of money to treat people correctly in the first place than to deal with the aftermath of undertreated mental illness.
Yeah, and I think we need to really stop with the silos, because it's not working, and it's extraordinarily expensive this way.
Yeah.
And despite, the humanity of it.
Right.
Oh. Meg, I'm so glad you came on today. We talked a really long time. I think we got a lot of information out there. You've answered a tremendous number of questions. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. And like I said, if you have any other questions, just shoot me an email or leave me a message, and I'll try and answer whenever you have.
Yes. And I can attest to my viewers, you do respond very promptly, which is greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I appreciate you having the platform to just get the word out about this. I appreciate your having me on. So thank you. And thank you for your work too, Deb.
Thanks, Meg.
Okay. All right. Bye, everyone.
Well, everybody, that was a lot of information. I know we went a little long. We started a little late and then we went a little long, but I think that this is something that all of my viewers really need to be aware of. As I was saying, the humanity of caring for folks who really need our help as a society, but also from a monetary perspective, that if we are not providing appropriate care for individuals with mental illness or long-term acute medical needs, it is also extraordinarily expensive, which we are all bearing the cost burden of. So I hope that you have hit the like button and that you will share this video out so that we can all reach out to our representatives and let them know that there needs to be action taken. Some of that can be with some of the current budget that's coming in, that we are able to allot money that will be better spent in keeping people in a humane housing situation and not incarcerated, not homeless, not housed in a hospital setting. So thank you all for joining me. Look forward to seeing you all next week at 9 o'clock for Friday Friends. Have a great week, everyone.
If you liked this video, please follow us on social media and subscribe on YouTube. For more information, visit rielderinfo.com or call 401-585-0509. If you have any questions, email deb@rielderinfo.com.